So welcome back. So where we were discussing how the global governance order is behaving or what is happening at a global level. So we will continue our discussion. And now we're coming back to Madam Helga. Madam, you started this when you say that the new paradigm and the new architect will be emerging. Today I think that a Canadian Prime Minister is in China. He specifically mentioned this in a briefing. So Canada is in China, and they are mending their relationship. So it is a necessity for Canada in the new world order. He used the word new world order, and it's very specifically said new, then take a pause, then said world, and then take a pause and said order. So that means a closest ally of US or a neighbor is also now recognizing the new global order is emerging. So what you see, what should be that global order?
Well, I think it must, first of all, take into account the interest of every single country on the planet, because the history of international law and conferences shows very clearly whenever the principle of taking the interest of every other into account, it led to peace. And when that principle was violated, like in the Versailles Treaty, or in the Paris Conference of 1919, where important countries were left out, it was just a stepping stone to a new world war. And I think we have reached now a situation where the first time in history we are sitting in one boat.
So coming back to you again, so especially in the context of the Russia and Ukraine conflict, there's a lot of rumors and there are a lot of sayings, and there's a narrative war is also going on. But I want to ask you what we can expect in 2026 from Russia and Ukraine crisis. Will the both countries will be able to solve this, or it will be more complicated?
Well, I think that any ultimate solution of this conflict will take much more time than just 1 year. Because definitely, even if we have the end of the military confrontation, there'll be a very long aftertaste, and we will have to live with that for many, many years. However, I think it is not impossible to manage de-escalation and even some kind of end to the military confrontation.
Oh, that's
it might.
That's a good news.
I think. Yeah, that might happen already over this year. We cannot take it for granted, of course, but I wouldn't rule out such an option because finally the sides started to discuss specific arrangements for the settlement. And this is already a major step ahead, though, of course, their positions are still very different from each other. And there are many people, especially in Europe, who do not want to see this conflict stopping.
I will come back to you, Doctor. My team has told me that Madam Helga has rejoined us. So, Madam, you are talking about the architect of a new world order. So you were just talking about the fairness and the opportunity for everybody. So what more you want to add on that?
Well, I think that the fact that the international system is collapsed now brings on the table very immediately the issue of how is the human species capable of giving ourselves a system of self-governance where we can, survive on a durable basis, or are we? We are not animals. We are not in the jungle where the strongest eats the weaker one. And I think, I have issued an initiative already after the special military operation in Ukraine started in 22, where I said that development means that we need to overcome geopolitics. Geopolitics has been the reason for 2 world wars.
And you are paying a price for that. Your name has been put on the most wanted list, and you are blacklisted at many forums.
Yes, but in reality, what I'm saying is also in the interest of Ukraine. So it's I think people have to really realize that have reached a point in human history where either we start to think about the one humanity first, and that no nation has the right to have an interest which is in contradiction to the interest of the one humanity. If we make that mental jump, we can solve any problem. You know, it's like a different method of thinking, where you basically say we are the one human species. We have for the first time the possibility to completely self-destruct, because if it ever comes to the use of nuclear weapons, it will lead to a global nuclear war. And I do not believe that we can have tactical nuclear wars and that tactical nuclear wars can be won. I have made many discussions with Ted Postol, who is an eminent scientist and probably the best rocket expert in the world, and he has made many arguments of why once you use one nuclear weapons, it is the logic of such a war that all weapons eventually will be used. And if that happens, then there will be no human race left. And I think nowadays politicians, are much too light-minded in saying, yeah, let's just throw some more weapon systems into the situation. Let's give Ukraine long-range missiles. And, there is this big dispute about the 91 drones attack on the residence of President Putin, which is denied by many people in the West, but the Russians have provided evidence that it did come from Ukraine. I don't think people realize
that was a dangerous escalation. That was a dangerous.
If this would have been successful, we probably would not be sitting here anymore.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean,
you are right.
I mean, it would have been the decapitation of the strongest nuclear power on the planet, which right now is Russia, and it would have triggered, in all likelihood, a global nuclear war. And people are playing with these things, and I think it is something we have to wake the populations up, because I think right now, given the fact that the governments seem to be not capable of addressing the problem, I think we need a strong international peace movement, a civil society movement, where every citizen has to start to take responsibility, because we are.
Whenever you start a peace movement, and you know better than me, then you are the part of the hit list, and you have been blacklisted. You are still on their hit list. So because you are promoting peace in the Ukraine, you are promoting peace in the Eurasia and everywhere. So now going back to Dr. Andrew Kantonov, as Madam Helga was talking about attack on the President Putin's residence, I think that was a shocking news for me and any other sensible person in the world. So we want to understand how the Russia absorbed that and show the patience, because that was a dangerous escalation.
Well, I think that these days we are getting used to Ukrainian strikes deep in the Russian territory. So it's not really something completely new. But of course, an attempt to hit the president's residence was quite shocking. I think that the question which people ask themselves here in Moscow is whether the Ukrainian side could have done it without a significant Western engagement, because of course many experts argue that Ukrainians do not have the technical capacities in terms of targeting and launching and monitoring
and
such missile attacks.
And satellites.
Yeah, satellites. So the question is to what extent this responsibility should or should not be shared by Western partners of Ukraine. Definitely nobody wants escalation right now. And I think that neither in Moscow nor in Washington they are ready to get into a direct military confrontation with each other. But the longer this conflict lasts for, the higher the chances are that at some point we will get into such escalation with absolute unpredictable consequences.
And I think when you say the USA does not want to escalate or engage in the war, I don't believe so. That is I just want to differ from you, because if they wanted to do so, why they have changed the name, the Ministry of Defense, to the Ministry of War? I think they are in love of war. They really want a war, but nobody is entertaining their request.
Well, I think that I cannot really oppose this view. Definitely, if you look at the budget of this Ministry of War and the current plans of President Trump, definitely some of these plans are quite scary. Because definitely he's not interested in arms control at all. He's not interested in any negotiations on strategic stability.
You have a water? We will come back to you. So, Madam Helga, so the same question to you. So when US is on the one side, they're portraying they don't war, but they are specifically ministry only country on the earth which have a ministry of a war. So how do you guys see that?
Well, it forebodes nothing good, in my view. President Trump won the election by promising that he would cut the defense budget in half, that he would end all wars, that he would not start new ones. And if you look at the situation now, in this year, there were several, half a dozen military strikes against other countries. He's increasing the budget of 900 billion for the defense budget. He wants to build it to increase it to 1.5 trillion for 27. Likewise, you have an incredible militarization going on in the European Union. Germany wants to become the strongest army of Europe, which is causing nerve-wracking reactions even in France, who are worried because, historically Germany did not play such a great role, and people have not forgotten that. So I think we are looking at a situation where the economic system of the West is doing poorly. Europe is collapsing. The German economy is in a free fall. The US is doing a little bit better, but also, if you compare, for example, the American economy with that of China, you can see that also the American infrastructure is in terrible condition. So, what they are now resorting to, at least I can say that for Europe for sure, they try to compensate for the economic collapse of the physical economy by an unprecedented rearmament program.
Yes.
And, I think this has the danger of becoming a self-fulfilling.
That is the only production capacity they have. Otherwise, their production capacity is very weak.
Yes, I mean, you have bankruptcies and insolvencies practically, like we didn't have it since the Great Depression, at least not since the end of the Second World War. So it is really the policy of Hjalmar Schacht that, you spend for the military, paid in the case of Hjalmar Schacht, it was the MEFO bills, and this time it's called in German Sondervermögen, which has become the non-word of the year because it basically means to create debt for what? For actually destructive purposes, because any euro you invest in the military is a destruction of the economic potential of a society, and it goes along with incredible austerity measures, infrastructure collapsing, the education system is producing less and less good results. The pensions are in danger, the social expenditures are being cut, and the people have to pay. And I think that we have right now a situation where in all Western governments, the population is realizing that the governments are not really representing their interests. This is why you have
even in the German chancellor, while he was in India, he confessed they make a mistake by moving away from the nuclear energy. That is a big confession, because in the past, even in the present, they were opposing the nuclear energy, while with our sane voices was telling them, no, nuclear is a good option, clean, durable. but these countries was not listening. But no, yesterday he was in India. He mentioned that they made a mistake because they are buying the most, you can say, expensive energy from the world. Now coming back to Dr. Andrew Kantanov, hope you are fine now, so we can continue again. So when we look at this situation, what we are talking about, the Ministry of War and their spending, a person or a country which a huge spending, if they don't want a war, so who can trust them? So will Russia will trust that, or China will trust that, or any other country in the world, will they, like Pakistan or any other country, will trust them? They don't want a war?
Well, I think that, again, I might be dead wrong here, but I think that Trump doesn't care at all about who trusts him and who does not. He believes that he can overspend and overperform any potential adversary. He's not really interested in arms control or any, security arrangements with other countries. I think that Trump is pursuing a policy of what I would call a strategic isolationism. He believes that the United States can do it on its own. Without engaging other nations. And I think this is a mistake. I think that it is very difficult to deal with the leadership that is profoundly unpredictable and cannot be trusted. If you look at China, for instance, they have just signed a trade deal with the United States for a year, and now the United States tells China that it can impose additional 25% tariffs because China buys too much oil from Iran. How can you build your trade relations with a nation if the nation might change its mind literally overnight? It's impossible, even for purely commercial reasons. It is very difficult. But I think that President Trump does not care that much about the rest of the world. He believes that everybody will have to accept the rules of the game that he offers to the world. He believes that he's the only person who might set these rules. And definitely, in the end of the day, that might produce a powerful anti-Trump coalition, even from his own partners and allies. I think it might be a dangerous policy for the United States if you push the envelope too much and if you insist that you are the only guy in town and that everybody should listen to you and take orders from you.
I think that is the reason so many allies of US, like South Korea, the South Korean president was in China, so then the Irish prime minister was in China, then now the Canadian prime minister is in China, now then the QA is Australian, and the UK prime minister there will be visiting China. So that's why there are actually, it's a distrust of allies of USA, because when the Korean prime minister was there, he said, I am here to mend the relation. So when the Canadian prime minister is there, he is looking to mend the relationship. I think China has proposing an alternative, what Madam Helga was talking about, so everybody win. In this context, the concept of community with a shared future, the President Xi Jinping vision, and the most recently global governance initiative, how these two initiatives can contribute to build that, the vision you are talking about, Madam Helga.
I think the global governance initiative of President Xi Jinping is, in my knowledge, the only one of a government which proposes a new system of international relations. And if you look at the details, it's supposed to give sovereignty, every country having a voice, non-interference, the principles of peaceful coexistence. And I think that initiative should be put on the agenda in a much more open way. I think there should be conferences about it, initiated, if possible, by the BRICS. The SCO could put it on the table. They could invite all countries, including European countries, including the United States, because I think from some place the initiative must come to bring forward an architecture which solves this problem. And our initiative of a new security and development architecture of the Schiller Institute is absolutely in cohesion with the global governance initiative. And I would really hope that from some place, the non-aligned movement, the BRICS country, the African Union, CELAC, ASEAN, there are many institutions who could be the initiator of making such a discussion of the global governance initiative. And I think it would be an intervention which would be absolutely crucial, and it would be so much welcomed by all the people in the world of goodwill.
Sorry, ma'am, I have to interrupt you because though my producer just communicated, so we have crossed over the time limit. So discussion was so involving. So we did not know that we have spent already the 45 minutes. Thank you, thank you so much, Madam Helga and Dr. Andrew Kantoranov, for your wonderful contribution, and your discussion always bring more questions and always bring more ideas for the cooperation. I wanted to continue, but due to the time limit, we cannot continue. But I think we can continue this discussion some other program. So viewers, when we look at the global level, things are not quite rosy, but still there is a hope. The problem is the distrust and the choices made by some countries to show their hegemonic aspirations or the superiority complex, which in reality is an inferiority complex, are creating the problem. But still, the same voices like China, Russia, Pakistan, and some other countries, they are trying to mend those scratches. Like Pakistan is playing a role to bring peace in the Middle East. Pakistan is trying to act as a security guarantor in the Middle East. And there are the news. So Pakistan played a very important role in the recent conflict between USA and Iran. And Pakistan played a role to stop this conflict, which was going to be end of war. But Pakistan played a role to stop it. I think these choices are these actions are required now more. And this context, we can see how the community with a shared future and the global governance initiative of China can assist the world. Thank you so much. We will come with a new episode next week. Thank you.